Thank you, Audrey and Rusty. We appreciate that. Giving our invocation today is William Starrett.
Shall we bow our heads? Dear Creator, we ask that you guide us to be truthful and fair to all. Help us to build goodwill and better friendships. Guide us that our actions may be beneficial to all concerned. God, save us from fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions, that your will, not ours, be done. God, give us the strength and direction to do the right thing always. Please show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. God, please bless all of us assembled here today and the meal we are to receive. Amen.
Thank you, William. That was beautiful. With our visiting guests and Rotarians, Rebecca Gilmoxon.
Good afternoon. Today we have two visiting Rotarians. First we have Travis McNeil from Main Street. And we have Tom Ledbetter from West Metro. Thank you. Welcome to you both. I know we have a number of visitors as well, so if you are here with your visitor, if you would stand up and the mic will come around to you and please introduce your visitor.
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Davis, and I'm happy to have our daughter Lauren Davis Green, who is a premier relationship manager at First Citizens Bank.
Hello everybody, I'm Lee Lumpkin, and I'm very delighted to have my very wonderful husband, Mike Lumpkin, as my guest. First time here as our guest.
I'm with Karen Aaron Flommy. Her membership application is in progress, so we're excited. And she wanted me to mention she has a free Thanksgiving that she does every year out of the kindness of her heart. You can look it up on her Facebook page, Karen's Mobile Kitchen and Catering. Karen Aaron Flommy.
Wonderful, welcome.
Welcome, guests. Thank you all for being here today. With health and happiness, we've got Audrey Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's try that again. It's like a bad Charlie Brown teacher. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
There we go. So, in thinking about everything that's going on, what disease scares you the most? Well, Time Magazine did a poll, and Alzheimer's was the disease that scared most people the most, with 40% responding that, cancer at 39%, and heart disease way down at 8%. Well, now what does that have to do with health and happiness? It has to do with the blue bucket on your table. So do your part to support the research for a cure. If you want a tax-deductible donation for that, just make sure you write a check out, make it payable to the CART fund, drop it in. Every penny helps. Anybody with an office on Main Street? Anybody here with an office down on Main Street? As of 11:45, Dominion Energy was reporting more than 1,800 customers were without power. The cause? A squirrel had damaged their equipment. So y'all better be putting out some little food, some acorns or something. They get desperate these times. And speaking of nuts, we have the Spring Valley Rotary Club represented here, and they had their lovely display out in the lobby. And if you did not get some before the meeting, they will be here after, but they make no guarantees that everything will be available. So, thank you, Spring Valley. Appreciate that. In the sports world, in case you haven't heard, Muschamp got fired. That can be a sign of, tears or joy, or tears of joy, whichever works for you. And if you didn't see it yesterday, Irmo native Dustin Johnson won the Masters. Yeah. And he didn't just win it, he won it by the lowest score ever recorded at 20 under par. It was pretty phenomenal to watch.
We do like to golf here. We love to golf in Irmo.
Yes, we love to golf in Irmo and in Columbia and in Ridgeway and in other parts of our fair state. So that was a pretty big thing there. What else? I don't have a whole lot today. Maybe that's good. A cabbie picked up a nun. Go ahead and start laughing now if you want. Maybe that's enough. The cab driver stared at her and she said, "Why are you staring at me?" And he says, "I've always had this fantasy to kiss a nun." She says, "Oh, I'll kiss you if you're single and Catholic." Cab driver says, "I'm both." The nun says, "Woohoo, pull into this alley." She then proceeds to kiss him in a way that would make a hooker blush. Back in the cab, though, the driver started crying. He said, "I lied, I'm married and I'm Jewish." The nun said, "That's okay, my name's Kevin and I'm going to a Halloween party." Things aren't always what they seem, folks. Okay, so now that you're figuring out your Halloween costume for next year, next week is Thanksgiving and we're not meeting next Monday, so I pulled together a couple of quotes about thankfulness because, lately some of us have had challenges with finding something to be thankful for. So here's just a couple. If a fellow isn't thankful for what he's got, he isn't likely to be thankful for what he's going to get. From Mr. Willie Nelson, when I started counting my blessings, my whole life turned around. From a gentleman named Robert Lintner, he said, "Thanksgiving was never meant to be shut up in a single day." From JFK, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. From Meister Eckhart, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. From Randy Pausch, showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things humans can do for each other. And then, courtesy of Charles Schultz via Charlie Brown, what if, just for today, we were thankful for everything? Have a great week, Rotarians.
Thank you, Audrey. I appreciate that. I do want to remind everybody about the Blue Buckets. She mentioned about that at the very beginning, and I do want to give a minute to the Spring Valley Rotary Club to come talk about their nut sales. Michael Burney's here and company to talk about the Spring Valley Rotary Club.
What a fun bunch. Good to be with you. Our group is still meeting virtually, so it's great to see people in person. This is wonderful. We are from Spring Valley. We are the nut people. And the head nut dispatched us here to sell out today. So we appreciate you guys. If you just take everything off our table today as you leave today. We are supporting Harvest Hope, Transitions, Meals on Wheels, Big Red Barn, Columbia USO, scholarships, Sister Care, and many more groups that you're familiar with. And now, lovely Holly will tell you about a few of the items.
Thank you, guys. It's nice to be here with you today. As Mike said, 100% of the proceeds from the nut sale from Spring Valley Rotary Club go to support local charitable organizations. Each year we have a committee that meets and decides which ones, but it's always local and or scholarships for local students. Some of the favorite items, I just want to show you a quick thing. This is, we do have cashews, so if you're not a pecan, however you want to say it, person, we have cashews. We also have, this is what's called the favorite foursome, and it is, I think that's $20, is that right? The favorite foursome is a favorite, and I'll tell you why. It comes in a little white box, it's easy to ship, and it's lightweight. So if you have faraway family or cousins or people that you want to send something to, it's a great thing and it's easy to ship. The next one is a dynamic duo. It's about a third again as heavy for only a couple more dollars. So it is a much better value if you don't have to ship it. It just depends on what you're looking for. But this one's really good. And if you want it all, we have something called Seventh Heaven, which is a $31 larger tin. If you put it out at Thanksgiving or Christmas, your family will love you. And for those bakers or cookers, we have $11 for unsalted halves. So I hope you guys will help us to sell. And these are cheaper than if you were to buy them at a young kiosk in town. So we have them for a better deal than that.
Thank you, Spring Valley, for being here. They'll be here for the rest of the meeting, and they've got lots of samples out there, examples of what you all can buy. Please support them and all the local charities that they're being supported to. And we're glad that they're using Young's Pecans out of Florence and a South Carolina company. Speaking of philanthropy, we've got our own initiatives coming up, and I'm going to have Andy Shane come up and give an update on the Salvation Army bell ringing that this club is participating in. Andy?
Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing? Good. Okay. It's been a rather busy couple of weeks, hasn't it? Well, that said, that means you should not ignore the fact that upcoming we have our shifts to do the Salvation Army bell ringing. If you haven't heard, we have shifts from December 9th to December 17th at the two Greens locations, what we'll call the traditional Greens, or the OG, the one on Assembly Street, and the new Greens at Garner's Ferry. So if you haven't had a chance maybe to go out there, here's an excuse to go check out the new Greens on Garner's Ferry, out where the Berks, the Ross, the Big Lots is over there by I-77. Actually, half the shifts are about filled so far. So for those of you who have signed up for shifts, I actually have a Cersei for you. So come see me. I'll give you your Cersei.
Is it from Greens?
No. And the other thing too is, of course, I'm going to get Mason's credit card and be able to let you buy whatever you want from Greens as part of your shift. That's your additional Cersei if you do 2 shifts. How about that? But no, I wish it was. But I thought, obviously, we reduced the number of shifts this season, of course, with what's happening. But I thought that we could probably fill those days, and I think, as I said, so far so good. The URL to sign up, it's an easy sheet. It's bit.ly/ColaBell, and it's capital C, capital B, but pretty easy to remember. But it's also in the emails that Cynthia sends out each week. Please sign up for a shift. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is actually, I think, on the sheet to sign up for if you have any concerns or anything. So please feel free and please sign up. And I look forward to seeing you all outside the liquor store ringing bells. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you coordinate all this, and I do appreciate everybody who's already signed up. Please sign up and get the time that you want, the locations you want, as soon as you can. We also have another philanthropic effort going on with our club this December 5th. We've got our food packing event, which is going to be here in the hallway. There are sign-up sheets on each of y'all's tables, so look at those sign-up sheets now. Think about if you're coming or not. It's going to be at 9 o'clock, Saturday, December 5th, here at Seawells, probably 2 hours. The more people that we have show up, the less time it'll take. Jonathan, I've forgotten how many meals we're planning to pack, but it's a lot.
10,000.
10,000, okay? Now it sounds like a lot, and it is, and it's very helpful. We are supporting those children and families in Richland School District 1, so they'll have food over the holidays. But be here. We're bringing some family members that are over the age of 18, and we'll knock it out as fast as we can. About how many thousand? 15?
10,000.
10,000 meals that we'll be doing on Saturday, December 5th, 9 o'clock. Please sign up so we know and have a head count. There will be people here from Richland 1, like we had last year, volunteering. And don't forget that the masks that we have, some of you all are wearing them, are helping to support the production and the actual paying for that food. It's not free. Our Our volunteer efforts and our service is free, but we need you all to buy these masks. They're $10 a piece, and that goes to help us purchase the food for these 10,000 meals that we're packing for Wish of One. Again, fill out the sheets, let Jonathan know that you're coming, bring a spouse, bring a friend, and help us for that effort on Saturday, December 5th. And buy a mask. The masks are available out front. Speaking of out front, you did not see Brad Henry here today. Brad he's no longer with Capital Consultants, so he's no longer our manager for this club. Capital Consultants, the company is, but we're going to be having, as our contact and our manager from Capital Consultants, it's going to be Della Chadwick. Della has been handling our finances since we've been with them for about 1.5 years now, so she's not new to our club. She'll be fine. All of her contact information will be in the next newsletter. Capital Consultants is still our managing company, and they have all of our information. They'll be sending out the invoices and whatnot, but it will no longer be Brad Henry. Out front, you can buy these masks, and everything's going to run as smoothly as possible with Della and Capital Consultants. Y'all should have received your fourth quarter invoices. Please pay those as soon as you can. We need people to catch up on their invoices. Name tags are out front. I forgot mine in my car. But if you do get your name tag, you can't put it back. It's a one way only. Just grab it, take care of it, try to remember to bring it in with you every week, but don't put it back for COVID purposes. Membership, as we've talked about in the past, is very important to this club, and we want to grow it with as much diversity and youth as possible, and even those folks who may not be so young. But we're going to have a Discover Rotary meeting here on Monday, December 7th at 11:30. So if you have a prospective member for the Rotary Club, bring them on Monday, December 7th at 11:30. And President-elect Catherine Davis has an exciting speaker for us that day. We have Alex English. And now, as I was writing this down to remind you all to do that, I was also thinking we may have some young people here who don't know who Alex English is. He grew up here in Columbia, went to USC. His jersey is retired and hanging in the rafters at CLA, and he also went on to have a very successful professional career with the Denver Nuggets. He will be here. He's still very active in the community and a beloved member of our community. So Monday, December 7th, Alex English will be here. Bring a prospective member for the Discover Rotary meeting at 11:30. Now I'd like everybody to take 2 minutes to introduce yourselves to the people at your table. 2 minutes, 30 seconds per person. Go.
Are you related to Harry Jeffcoat by any chance? Okay. Okay.
know your table mates a little bit better. We won't do this every Monday, but we will do it from time to time. And I do encourage y'all to sit with new people every Monday. Don't sit with the same people so that you can get to know a lot more members in our club a little bit better. Okay, now I think we've got everything on the agenda taken care of. Now we're going to hand it over to Lee Lumpkin, who's going to introduce our speaker today. Lee?
Hello, everybody. I met Dick Harpootlian in 1983 when he was the solicitor, the deputy solicitor for Richland County, and my husband was assistant solicitor. And I remember it just like yesterday what Mike Lumpkin said to me about Dick Harpootlian. He said, "You will never meet a more ethical man." And as our years together, so true, as we've had our years together and we've had great friends on both sides of the aisle, Mike always makes it a point to tell them, if you think that Dick is going to be partisan when anything's ethical, you are wrong. It will always be about what's ethical. And that's been the man that I've gotten to know over these 37 years. First of all, Dick Harpootlian is husband to the lovely and gracious Jamie Harpootlian. Jamie's dad was Charles Lindler, our fabulous Rotarian, who I look over his table and we still miss him. Dick is father to Kate Harpootlian, an exquisite and talented dancer and choreographer. And Dick is the wonderful godfather to our son Doug. I cannot remember any time that I did not call Dick Uncle Dick, or any time that he did not call me Aunt Lee. But I will tell you, my favorite thing to call him is my friend. Your newly re-elected State Senator, Richard A. Harpootlian.
Thank you, Lee, for not telling the truth. So as I look around this room, I see people I've known. Joe Anderson and I were at Clemson together years ago, more than half a century ago, actually, and knew each other there, and were friends. He became a federal judge, and I'm still a lawyer. So he's done something with his life. And let me say this to you. I've appeared in front of Joe many, many times, and there isn't a finer trial judge that you can appear in front of. He's got something that's pretty well disappeared from most of society, and that's manners. He's cordial. He is discreet. He doesn't hammer on people, humiliate people, even the dumb ones, Joe. I mean, I've watched him be very kind to people that some of the judges we grew up with would have not been so kind to. Mike Lumpkin, I've known, again, since the late 70s, and he and I worked together, and were working together when he met Lee. I see a number of people out here that I've known many, many, many decades. And I want to say, I want to commend y'all. I hear, I haven't gotten out much in the last 6 or 8 months. I forget how much good clubs like this do. So thank you for what you do. I want to talk, I've got 20 minutes to talk to you. I had 2 topics I was going to talk about, but over the weekend, I came up with a third I think is more important, and I'm going to talk about all 3 of them in somewhat of an abbreviated way and then answer questions. But before I get to that, I want to tell you how I got into politics. In 1973, I was a law student involved in a clinics program. In a clinics program, we went to family court and either prosecuted or defended juveniles charged with crimes, most of them minor crimes. I was prosecuting a young man charged with stealing a bicycle. He was defended by this lawyer. He ended up beating me. I just don't understand why. His name was Matthew Perry. Just kicked my ass. And of course, Judge Perry at the time, I didn't know who he was, and he had a voice that sounded like God, and just beat me to a drum. But while I was waiting to go to that, this was in the old Columbia Hospital down on Hart Street, while I was waiting to go to court, I wandered by a room and I saw 6 guys sitting in front of the dais, and it appeared to be a meeting, and it turned out to be a county council meeting. And as I watched it, I saw there was a guy named Pete Levenis, a guy named Son Grimsley, and a guy named Warren Gizet. Warren Gizet was a former football coach here, and later we became great, great friends, but at the time I didn't know any of them. And Pete Levenis, who was a World War II veteran and hero, had lost a leg, and he had an artificial leg I didn't know at the time. And sitting next to him was a guy named Son Grimsley. And they got into a heated argument, and as Pete turned to talk to Warren Gizet, Son reached over to make a point and put his hand on Pete's leg, which fell off with a clatter. Pete, thinking that Son had hit him, hopped up on one leg and just started pummeling Son Grimsley. And they both fell down into a heap, and Warren Gizet and one of the other council people finally pried him loose. One of them had a bloody nose, the other one had like bruises all over his face. And I said, God, I want to do that. So in 1986, I ran, after being deputy solicitor, I went out in private practice with Jack Roy, and I ran for county council, and I was not disappointed. My good friend Alex Sanders, who was a member of the House, senator, Court of Appeals, original chief judge, president of the College of Charleston, once said to me, the reason Richland County politics are so incredibly vicious are that the stakes are so incredibly low. Okay, never mind. You'd have to be there to really appreciate that. I will tell you that county council was probably the best experience, 4 years of that. We built an art museum. We funded a county-wide library. We fixed a bunch of roads. We provided more funding for the health department. We did a bunch of good things, because it's not like where I am now, where things languish for months and months and months. It comes up on an agenda, you vote it up or down. It moved expeditiously. You either won or you lost. And coalitions got put together. Briss Marchant, who was a Republican, Ray McKay, who was a Republican, became my good friends, and we worked together with a coalition of Democrats and Republicans to get that stuff done. Now, there's some people on both ends that would never, ever think of the word compromise. But Richland County Council taught me that when good people come together, we can get things done. Now, again, I had two topics I wanted to talk about, but this weekend's news about the coronavirus in South Carolina prompted me to put that as my first topic. This weekend, we've had 4 days now of over 1,300 new cases. 3,844 people have died from COVID in South Carolina so far this year. We've got a 15.4% infection rate, compared to New York, a little over 2%. The whole state of New York. Last year, a little over 1,000 people died in motor vehicle accidents. That includes drunk drivers, that includes just pure accidents, 1,000 people. 1,100 died of drug overdoses. 160 died of flu. You add all those up together, it's still not the number so far have died from COVID in our state. So what do you do? What do you do? And I think there are a couple of things that we can do to make a difference, because if we don't do anything, we're going to be in lockdown again. And that puts businesses out of business. There's no rescue program that's going to pass Congress. People are going to go out of business. Schools are going to shut down. We're all going to be sequestered in our homes. And I've been there since February, and my wife and I were very close, but we've really been too close. And that's not on my part. I think she's probably about had it with me. I'm not an easy guy to live with to begin with. Lock me up in a house with somebody for 8 months and you'll find out how hard it is to live with me. But in all seriousness, there are things we can do. And let me just talk about a couple of those. In July of this year, I wrote a letter to the head of DHEC, and I cited a statute. Let me read that statute to you before I put it in context. 44-4-300, powers over dangerous facilities and materials. After the declaration of a state of public health emergency, which we have, the governor's declared, DHEC may exercise in coordination with state agencies, local governments, or any other organization the emergency support functions that they feel are appropriate, including, number one, to close, direct, and compel the evacuation, let me read that again, to close, direct, and or compel the evacuation of any facility of which there is reasonable cause to believe that it may endanger the public health. So on January 17th, I wrote a letter to the head of DHEC and copied the governor. Actually I wrote it on the 13th, I got a response on the 17th, saying, look, we have a number of establishments that are super spreaders in my community and elsewhere. What prompted the letter was a concert well, it was outdoors, but elbow to elbow, we all saw videos of it in Georgetown County, at a bar that I've been to a long time ago, called Suck, Bang, and Blow. It's a motorcycle bar, and someday I'll tell you why it's called that, but it has nothing to do with what you're thinking of. So, but they had this huge crowd, super spreader. Then 5 Points, huge, thousands of kids down there, no masks, going from bar to bar. And the city was doing what it could by enforcing a mask ordinance. They were having their fire marshals go down and say you're overcrowded, but to no effect whatsoever. So I wrote DHEC and said, look, you need to use your emergency powers to go in and shut these places down. I mean, they can go in, let me tell you something, this was passed in 2002. They can, if they think you are a public health hazard, that you're infected, back when we had a tuberculosis epidemic up in Greenwood, I believe it was, they could go arrest people without a warrant, without probable cause. Well, they say they have probable cause to believe they're infected, and hold them for up to 72 hours without a hearing. Amazing powers. So they've got the power to walk, if they find, and let me make sure I use the right language here, if they find reasonable cause to believe it's a health hazard, they can walk in with their DHEC license off the wall, and that would be a bar or a restaurant, or any other place. They can shut them down. But DHEC refused, and in the response to me, they indicated they consulted with the governor. Now, the first problem with that is they are not a cabinet agency. The governor appoints the board hires the director. They are not a cabinet agency. They're an independent agency. So the first thing they tell me is, hey, the governor says he wants to leave it to local authorities to deal with this. And I said that I had a problem with that. This is my letter back. First, contrary to suggestion, EHPA, Emergency Health Powers Act, empowers DHEC, not local municipalities, to shutter establishments contributing to community spread. That's very simple. City of Columbia can't go in and shut somebody down because it's a health hazard. Not authorized by law. DHEC is the only one that could do that. That's number one. Number two, they raised issues about resources. So I said, if you would call on local folks, I'm sure they would assist you. Whether it be the City of Columbia with its inspection people or police officers. And that's another point. Why should we take limited law enforcement officers and take them off the street from arresting serious criminals or patrolling your neighborhood or stopping speeders or drunk drivers and put them patrolling kids in 5 Points who will not abide by those rules? And by the way, I don't blame the kids, I blame the bars. They're doing this for money. It's a profit-prompted violation of public decency and health standards. They have no regard for who gets the COVID. And by the way, in 5 Points, you've got Finley House and the other assisted living facility right there. Those folks have to walk through 5 Points to get to the drugstore, to get to the grocery store, Christopher Towers. And then I pointed out that nobody else has that ability to be proactive, to shut somebody down. And then the last thing is this. I spent 12 years of my life as a prosecutor. And we prosecuted a number of people simply because we wanted to deter certain conduct. You don't have to shut down every bar. You don't have to shut down every venue. But if you begin shutting them down and folks understand that's going to be the consequence, I believe, based on my experience in the criminal justice system, that will have some effect. That will have some effect. So I wrote an additional letter and said, and I said this, but your response here suggests DHEC is ceding the field, throwing up its hands, and leaving business of fighting COVID to cities and counties. That is unacceptable. Are we to conclude the state will likewise defer to local authorities when the hospitals are overrun and the number of dead exceed our capacity to safely bury them? And I said that somewhat sarcastically, but seriously, where is the state? Why aren't they involved in doing something to control the spread? Now, whether or not you have a statewide mask ordinance, I would be for it. Some people are against it because they say they have a First Amendment right. Okay, so First Amendment is the freedom of speech. Can y'all still hear me? Can you still hear me? Yes. Oh my God, my First Amendment rights have not been abridged. So, I mean, that is the most ludicrous, stupid, ignorant argument I've ever heard. You don't have a right to put my life in danger by not wearing a mask. Now, you know, to the extent it protects you, that's your business. But to the extent that you're spreading it, that's my business. And the kids seem to be the ones most oblivious to it. So what we've got to do is we've got to take away the opportunity for them to go to super spreader events, and DHEC won't do that. So again, I'm calling on the governor, please, first of all, it's not your call. It should be the call of the acting director of DHEC, Mr. Taylor, who's a lawyer. And by the way, that brings up one other point. They have not had a director now since May. We had the chairman of their board in front of us, a committee that Shane Massey chairs about 8 weeks ago, and he said they were interviewing people, but their preference was to hire somebody from South Carolina, number one, and number two, they'd have it done by the 1st of November, and we still don't have one. And I don't understand why you limit to South Carolina. I mean, maybe there are qualified people here, maybe not, but we're not having that many applications, and we still have a lawyer. I'm no more qualified to run DHEC than a man in the moon. You need a health professional. So I'm calling on the governor today to get out of the way of DHEC or encourage DHEC to do their job. They only have to shut down 2 or 3 places statewide for the rest of them to get the message. Now, and there's another piece to this. I firmly believe that and I firmly believe this because I've been talking to teachers and parents and my past experience dealing with kids. We should immediately make available for every kid in this state from pre-K through the 5th grade, through elementary school, for in-school learning now. We are losing a generation of kids. We will have feral kids on the street this time next year because they're getting no adult supervision. They're not getting an education. They won't be able to read or write. Now, how do we do that? How do we do that? And I've sort of figured out something that I think ought to get it done immediately. What will it cost? I mean, if you're going to actually socially distance kids in class, obviously you're going to need more classrooms. If you're going to do it in a way that makes sure these kids don't get sick. And by the way, the national statistics are only 5% of these kids actually become infected, and very few of them become symptomatic. Number one, in New York City, where they've been doing great studies, they say it's more like 1.5% for kids this age. Now, if you're a parent and you don't want your kid to go do this and you want to rely on virtual, that's fine. But there are many kids, if they don't do this, there's nobody at home. First of all, they don't have a computer. Secondly, if they had a computer, they don't have an adult. They don't have a parent who can be there. I swear there must be tens of thousands of kids at home, allegedly getting educated, that aren't even signed on. God knows what they're doing every day, but it ain't good. So, and how do we pay for this? Because I think it could cost, just talking to folks, scratching things out on the back of a napkin, it could cost several $100 million. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. Where do we get that money? Here's a simple answer. And this is something, Bob, I keep asking the finance people about this, and they keep telling me that's the way it's always been. We got a report on we got it in September, for the July 1 to June 30, 2020 budget. We had $623 million of what is called appropriations carry forward. What that means is this is the money agencies had, they didn't spend, that was appropriated to them. It means it's sitting there in their accounts, they have no need for it. From the Department of Commerce which had, let me make sure I get the right one, which had over 100 and, here it is, which had $103 million sitting in an account. Now they say some of that's committed for this, that, and the other. Well, tell us, how much is it? What's it committed to? I mean, this is not rocket science. House of Representatives, the House, 24 million. I mean, that buys a lot of cocktail parties and barbecue. I don't know what they're going to do with it. The Senate has 6 million, more reasonable, but why do we need it? Now you go through these agencies, it is absolutely, the Adjutant General has 44 million, almost 45 million. Why? We gave him an appropriation, and this is what he had left over. He didn't spend it. And remember now, you've got to fund things on an annual basis. I mean, Joe knows, he's in the legislature. You can't do a 5-year funding. You can't commit the state beyond 1 year. So this is extra money. Take half of this, and I'm told that would be enough to do what I want, which is to make sure every kid has an opportunity to go to school in person, train teachers to teach virtually. It is not a natural skill. It is something that requires training. We got between now and January, whenever they start in January, to do that. We also need to make sure that the environment's safe. I mean, you can't have 30 kids. You might have 15 kids that you space out. You have to have face masks. A lot of these kids rely on school to eat. We need to make sure they have the food. All those things, we can do it. But, you know, the most precious resource in this state is not the next automobile company we lure here. The most valuable resource is not the next sports event we have here. It is our children. I mean, does this confound anybody? Oh no, I'd rather have the next car deal than manufacturing plant than having our kids safe, secure, and educated, because no one's going to be able to work at that car plant if we don't get these kids an education. So, thank you. But okay. So this is a sort of back of the envelope complaint to the governor, and at the same time a suggestion. He should call us back, the legislature, call us back to do what I just said about making sure. You just don't stand up and say, oh, I think all the schools ought to be open. Well, there's economic cost to doing that. We've got the money sitting there in people's savings accounts I believe they shouldn't have. So that's how you fund it. That's how you do it. So, and Henry McMaster and I have been friends for 40 years. We've been on cases together, co-counsel on cases. I was chairman of the Democratic Party when he was chairman of the Republican Party. We traveled the state together. He's a good guy. I like him. There's nothing evil about him. I just think that he's getting advice from people that are more concerned about maintaining some relationship with a business or not offending anybody. Well, look, it is our patriotic duty to do something that maybe it causes us to sacrifice something. We wear a mask. Maybe we can't go to a bar. And I don't want to sound like the 80-year-old guy complaining about the kids, but where's the sense of self-sacrifice? Where's the sense, that the greatest generation had? My dad was 23 when he was flying bomber missions over pre-D-Day Germany, first Berlin raid. You know what they called him? Pops. Because the rest of the people on his plane were 18, 19. Okay? Now, where are the 18 and 19-year-olds today? They're down in 5 Points doing tequila shots with no mask. Okay? Hundreds of them. Hundreds of them. To them, a football game, a cocktail, an event down at a bar, that's more important than making sure other people in this community don't die, or themselves. I mean, I found it fascinating that our quarterback at Clemson, Joe and I went to Clemson, we still have a football coach. I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself. Sorry. Our quarterback up there contracted COVID. He sequestered himself, and then they held him out longer to get his heart tested because they know there can be long-lasting complications. Okay, so let me move to the third topic real quick, if that's okay with you. So, well, actually, there's two topics, but let me hit the one you probably read the most about. Well, earmarks. I talked to Shane Massey today. Earmarks are pretty simple. They are secret appropriations. The way I found out about them, I got one. Okay? I went to, I was a fly in the ointment on something Senator Letterman wanted. He said, well, you know, how about help me on this and I'll help you whatever you want. And I didn't mind what he wanted. So he said, I said, what do you want? I said, I'd like some money for quiet zones in the city of Columbia. And he said, how much do you want? I said, $400,000 would be great. You got it. So the budget passes. I don't see it. It's nowhere to be found. It gets ratified. I still don't see it. And I kept calling, where's my 400K? Where is it? So in September, I get a call from Senate Finance saying, who do you want the check made out to? City of Columbia. Who do you want it delivered to? Me, so I can hand it to Steve Benjamin, have that wonderful photo of me handing him 400K. And so I get it. And it's from, the check is made out from the Department of Public Safety. That's the Highway Patrol. I said, whoa, why am I getting money from the Highway Patrol? And what I found out was this, that we appropriate, maybe the Highway Patrol asked for $10 million, and we appropriate $12 million. And then somebody in the Senate Finance Department will call, or on the House side, House Ways and Means will call and say, make out a check to the City of Columbia and deliver it to Senator Harpootlian for $400,000. Never written down anywhere. Nobody ever sees it. And you know what they call that? Wrong. That is wrong. Okay? That is not good. Somewhere between $35 and $50 million, and both the state newspaper and the Post and Courier run stories about this. Because what I did then was, because I asked questions and I was told, you're not on Senate Finance, you don't get it. So I did something any one of you can do. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and I got it, because they couldn't hold it back. And we figured it out, and we turned those over again to the newspapers, and they ferreted it out. Horrible stuff. How about $300,000 to a golf course in Barnwell? What? Okay. Appropriations, $100,000 to nonprofits that aren't nonprofits. I mean, it's rife with the potential for corruption. So, Shane Massey and I, Republican, Democrat, other Democrats, other Republicans, are going to try to amend the rules this year to prohibit that practice. That everything has to be, I mean, if you want $300,000 for a country club in Barnwell, I don't mind that. I'm going to vote against it, but you ought to have the opportunity to vote against it. Some of you may get enough votes to pass it. Make deal something out. I don't care, but we ought to know what's in the budget. Secondly, transparency, Department of Commerce. Holy moly. Okay? Let me give you the 30-second version of how I found out about that. To get what are called job development credits, there's a statute. And while the job development credit is pretty simple. If you you get approved here and you bring up industry in, all the state withholding, everything they pay, the 7% of that job that's withheld, instead of it going to the government, it goes to the company. Not a bad gig. But when you look at that, well, the Panthers wanted to bring their practice facility here. Professional athletes were not a qualified job, so we had to amend the statute. And in the process, I asked some simple questions. How many jobs will this bring? 6,500, they tell me. 6,500. I talked to Bobby Hitt, who I knew when he was a reporter at the Columbia Record in the state newspaper years ago, who then went to work as a PR guy at BMW, who has never run a business of his own, ever. No offense to my friends with the newspapers, but he's not a businessman. He is a PR guy. So I hired a woman, being the skeptic I am, named Rebecca Gunlofson, correct? Who was the economist for the Department of Commerce until 2 or 3 years ago, and she ran the numbers and said this: they're using an outdated formula, the actual number is 204. So I said, whoa man, we're going to give this guy, this $11 billion guy, 150 to 200 billion of our money, and we're going to get 204 jobs. So I asked more questions. Where's the money going? Where's it coming from? And I was basically stonewalled. So, and it passed over my objections, because nothing like, and by the way, after watching the Panthers the past few weeks, they probably really need a bigger practice field. I've been wanting to say that. I couldn't get any information out of them. I did two things. One, I asked for a legislative audit council report, and if I had more time, I'd share the details. Suffice it to say this: They're supervised by somebody called the Coordinating Council, who are people appointed by various officials. That has not turned down any deal they put in front of them for 10 years, ever they know of. Number two, there's no audit done. If somebody says I'm going to create 6,500 jobs, there's no audit on the back end to see if they actually did that. In addition to that, I filed a lawsuit to get, I served an FOI on Department of Commerce for a company called GT Tire, which has had a number of difficulties, and they stonewalled me, said we can't give you this. They couldn't give me documents. They redacted on documents the signatures of the lawyers. That's how far they went. About 4 weeks ago, we sued them. I sued them. Judge Robert Hood ruled they were wrong, and we're going to get all kinds of stuff, which will tell us, look, here's all I want to know. How much did we give them? What did we get for it? I mean, it's your money. You don't want to know that? And, look, they say, well, we brought all these jobs. I'm not sure they brought all those jobs, number one. And number two, let's take Boeing. Was Boeing a good deal?
Yeah.
Was it? I don't know. I mean, we got Boeing, but what did we pay? If I told you we paid $500,000 a job, was it a good deal? I don't know that we did. I don't know that we didn't.
How much did we give them a break on taxes? That's what it really comes down to.
No. We don't just do the job development credits. We buy the property. We give it to them. We build, look at, when you ride by Volvo, what do you think we're spending on all that road work so you can get off the interstate and get to Volvo so they can get their cars? $100 million? I know we're spending 60 for the Panthers facility on a new interchange for them. I mean, you've got to, and then of course the counties do fees in lieu of taxes. They lower the tax rate on them for 20 years to entice them to come. We are, and when you look at the Legislative Audit Council report, we're the least transparent of any state around us. North Carolina, Virginia's got a website. Everything I just asked for, you can go on the website and get it. Not here. What do they hide? So before we give them, I will filibuster the budget next year without transparency. Okay? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the most interesting thing. 1 minute, okay. And I'm going to make it 1 minute. So, all of us have IRAs or we invest money. The state of South Carolina has $31 billion invested for the retirement fund. Okay? So, what was our return on that last year? Anybody? What did we get? What'd you get on your money in your retirement account? 4%, 5%? If you had it invested in a Fidelity or one of those index accounts, you got somewhere around 9%. We got minus 1.58. What? Okay. So now let me tell you why that's really, really, really bad. Because we're so underfunded in our pension fund, we're going to have to do something radical in the long run. In the short run, I'm convinced this new guy they got, Mike Hitchcock's trying to bail us out. But they made so many bad decisions in the past. I don't know how he ever does that. Let me tell you the real bad thing about that. The individual employee, let's take a school teacher, pays 9% of his or her salary for retirement. Under a statute that was passed a few years ago, the entity, the school district's contribution is indexed based on that return. Currently it's 16%. So a school district, between the teacher and the school district, is paying 25% of that teacher's salary into the retirement fund, and then after it's invested, they lost money on it. And it can go up to 18%. Now, we keep increasing funding for school districts, or they increase your taxes, it's going to fund the retirement account. One last thing about that. Lexington County Hospital, I'm a patient there. I got doctors there. I love them to death. They're getting ready to try to go to be a nonprofit from being a county-owned facility. They have, and I don't have a problem with that, but they have $750 million in unfunded pension liability, and they're going to walk away from that. And who's going to eat that? Us! So I talked to somebody, I don't know if there's legislation to stop them from doing that. But somebody ought to try to stop them from doing that. And they've got enough money to pay that money to the state and then walk away. If they don't, then they shouldn't do it. Okay, so enough numbers, enough stuff. We have time for questions.
Maybe one question.
One question. Anybody? Yes, sir.
So, Joe, you talk about, I live right outside of 5 Points, and I'm probably one of the younger people in this room.
Easily.
So, you talk about how all the kids are going to 5 Points and they're, crowding the bars. I mean, there are about, I mean, from what it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, there are about 4 or 5 less bars and 5 Points. These 18 to 22-year-old kids, I mean, if y'all remember back then, I mean, all they cared about was hanging out with their friends and what the next Friday night is. But it doesn't seem like the state or anyone has done anything to allow the 20,000 kids that came in to come to South Carolina. Where else do they go to hang out?
Well, an 18-year-old shouldn't be going to a bar, period. Let me say that to you, okay? It's against the law.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Now, if 21-year-olds are in there, then, you know, that's not against the law. That's number one. And by the way, no freshman should, well, most freshmen are not 21, sophomores aren't 21, maybe a few juniors, and obviously seniors. So the bulk of this, and by the way, if you ride by, as I did Friday afternoon looking, it looked like high school seniors to me, lined up outside those bars. Scantily clad high school seniors, but high school seniors nonetheless. So my point is this: it is not this community's problem about where those kids go to get drunk on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. You know, when I was in college, you could drink beer. Beer was legal for 18-year-olds. Liquor was not. And we did not go somewhere into a bar and drink. There were no bars. Someday I'll give you a lecture about why bars are unconstitutional in South Carolina. That is in front of the courts right now. I'm done. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you being here. If you could stick around afterwards and answer a few questions, probably some folks have more questions. We do have a thank you pin that I've wiped down. Appreciate you being here today. Appreciate your insights on all of that information. He is my senator, by the way, just so you know. Probably many of y'all as well. Catherine Davis, President-elect, who is we're not meeting next week, but how about the week after that?
Next week, well, the week after Thanksgiving, we'll hear from Dr. Tom Bogart, who is the president of Columbia College. So that's the new president.
So November 30th will be our next meeting, and that'll be Dr. Tom, Mr. Dr. Tom Bogart of Columbia College. So everybody be here on the 30th for that. We will end in song. Rusty?